I've never written this down before. I told the cops the basic version, gave a statement to a ranger who looked at me like I'd been smoking something I found in the woods, and then I stopped talking about it. Amy doesn't bring it up either. We have this unspoken agreement that Gifford Pinchot never happened. But it's 2 years later, and I still check the back seat of my car before I get in. I still wake up at 4 a.m. for no reason, heart hammering, listening for a zipper that isn't there. So here it is. We left Portland on a Friday afternoon, late October, that sweet spot where the trails aren't crowded, and you can actually hear yourself think. Amy and I had this tradition every fall, one long weekend in the woods, no laptops, no notifications, just the two of us and a bottle of whiskey and the sound of rain on nylon. She's a school psychologist, spends all day managing other people's crises, and I'm a graphic designer staring at screens for 10 hours straight. We needed this. We drove my Subaru Outback up Highway 14 along the Columbia River, then cut north into Gifford Pinchot National Forest. The fog started rolling in around 4 p.m., thick and wet, the kind that swallows your headlights and makes you feel like you're driving into a wall of cotton. By the time we pulled into Lower Falls Campground, visibility was maybe 30 feet. The place was mostly empty. A family in an RV at Site 11, an older couple with a little teardrop trailer at 16, and a pair of kayakers at 8 who'd strapped their boats to a beat-up Tacoma. We took Site 14 at the end of the sea loop, backed up against a slope of Douglas firs so dense you couldn't see 10 feet into them. I pitched the tent, MSR, Hubba Hubba NX, 2-person, 2 doors, solid little fortress, while Amy got the fire going. By 6:30 it was pitch black, and the temperature had dropped to maybe 40 degrees. We cooked steaks on the grill grate, passed a flask of bullet back and forth, and talked about normal stuff. Her difficult colleague, my nightmare client, whether we should get a dog. The kind of conversation that makes you feel like the world outside the firelight doesn't exist. We zipped ourselves in around 10 p.m. The tent was cozy. Amy's sleeping pad on the left, mine on the right, our packs shoved down by our feet, a little battery lantern hanging from the ceiling loop. She fell asleep fast. She always does. And I lay there listening to the absolute silence of the woods. No wind, no animals. Just nothing. It should have been peaceful. Looking back, I should have noticed how complete the silence was. I woke up first, which is unusual. Amy's the morning person. The light through the rainfly was gray and watery, and I could hear the drip, drip, drip of condensation falling from the branches. I unzipped my sleeping bag, sat up, rubbed my face, and that's when I saw it. A sleeping bag. Rolled up but loosely, like someone had just shoved it through the tent door and left it. It was lying on the floor of the tent, right between Amy's feet and mine. I stared at it for a solid 10 seconds, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. We had 2 sleeping bags, mine, Amy's, both accounted for. This was a 3rd bag. It was dirty, stained with mud and something darker, older, and it smelled. Even from where I was sitting, I caught a wave of it, unwashed body odor, sour and sharp, mixed with damp earth and a faint sweetness that made me think of something rotting. "Amy," I shook her shoulder. "Amy, wake up." She groaned, blinked at me. "What? Did you bring an extra sleeping bag?" "What? No. Why would I?" She sat up, saw it, and went completely still. "The fuck?" she whispered. I unzipped the tent and dragged the thing outside into the gray morning light. It was a standard mummy bag, probably rated to 20 degrees, but it had seen hard use. The shell was ripped in 2 places, patched with duct tape that had gone brittle and yellow. There was a name patch sewn onto the chest area, the kind you'd put on a kid's bag for summer camp, faded black Sharpie on white fabric, property of M. Kowalski. Amy stood behind me, arms wrapped around herself. "Kevin, where did that come from?" "I don't know. Did someone come into our tent?" "No, I don't think so. The zipper was closed, both doors." We walked the sea loop and knocked on every occupied site. The family at 11 shook their heads, the kids peering out from behind their mom's legs. The older couple at 16, Don and Marlene from Spokane, actually came over to look at the bag. Don picked it up, sniffed it, made a face, and put it back down. "Not ours," he said. "Smells like someone died in it." The kayakers at 8 were already packing up. They said they hadn't seen or heard anything, but one of them, a guy with a red beard and a Moosehead Kayaks hoodie, looked at the name patch for a long moment. "Kowalski," he said. "There was a guy. Last year, maybe? Some hiker got lost up by the Lewis River Trail. Took them 3 weeks to find him. Don't remember the name, though." That was the moment I should have thrown everything in the car and driven back to Portland. I know that now. But here's the thing about your brain when you're standing in a beautiful forest on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee in your hand. It wants everything to be normal. It wants a reasonable explanation. So I made one up. "Probably someone camping here last weekend left it," I said to Amy. "An animal dragged it into our site. We just didn't notice it last night in the dark." She gave me a look. "An animal zipped open our tent, dropped a sleeping bag inside, and zipped it back up." "Amy, what's the alternative?" She didn't have an answer. Neither did I. We spent Saturday hiking down to the falls. It was a good day, cold, damp, the trail slick with wet leaves, but good. We held hands. We took pictures. I almost forgot about the sleeping bag. But when we got back to camp around 4 p.m., Amy stopped dead at the entrance to the tent. "Did you move my stuff?" "No." Her sleeping pad had shifted about 6 inches to the right. Her pack, which she always kept zipped and upright against the tent wall, was lying on its side. Nothing was missing, just moved. "Wind," I said. "We left the vents open." "The vents are mesh, Kevin." I didn't have an answer for that either. We burned the sleeping bag that night. I'm not proud of it. Probably violated 7 different leave no trace principles, but neither of us could stand the idea of it sitting there. It took forever to catch, and when it finally did, the smoke smelled wrong. Acrid, chemical, like burning hair. We watched it until it was ash, then I kicked dirt over the remains. We went to bed around 11. I lay awake for a long time, listening. The silence was back. At 2:15 a.m., a branch snapped, not a little twig, a branch. The sound of weight, the sound of a foot coming down on dead wood less than 10 feet from the tent. I felt Amy's hand clamp onto my arm in the dark. We lay there, not breathing, not moving. The silence stretched. 1 minute, 2, then another sound, a soft, wet shush, shush, shush through the leaves, moving away from us. "Animal," I whispered. "Deer or elk." Amy didn't answer. I felt her hand trembling. I didn't sleep again that night. Saturday bled into Sunday. We were supposed to leave in the morning, but the forecast called for more rain, and Amy wanted to get one more hike in. I didn't argue. I wanted to believe everything was fine. We went to bed early, exhausted. I fell asleep hard around 10. Amy's scream ripped me out of sleep at 3:47 a.m. I know the time because I grabbed my phone automatically, the screen blinding me for a second. "Someone's trying to get in," she hissed. "Kevin, someone's trying to open the zipper. My side." I fumbled for my headlamp, clicked it on. The tent was a cave of blue-white light. I aimed it at her door. The zipper was closed. Everything looked normal. "Are you sure? I don't hear..." And then I did. Shh. The sound of a zipper, slow, deliberate, coming from the other side of the tent, my door. I whipped around, light hitting the nylon. Nothing. The zipper was closed. But the sound had been unmistakable. Someone was outside, inches from the fabric, and they had just pulled the zipper pull down an inch before stopping. I grabbed my knife, a Benchmade folder I kept in my pack, and unzipped my door in one violent motion, stuck my head out into the freezing dark, headlamp beam sweeping. Nothing. The fog was so thick I couldn't see the fire ring 10 feet away. The air was wet and cold and tasted like dirt. I stepped out, barefoot, and the ground was icy. My light caught the grass around the tent, flattened in a wide circle, like someone had been pacing. The prints were fresh. The grass was still springing back in places. "Amy," I said, my voice coming out strange, "get up, we're leaving." "Now? Now?" She started packing inside the tent while I stood outside with the knife, spinning in slow circles, headlamp cutting useless white cones into the fog. I heard nothing, saw nothing, but I felt it. That primal thing at the back of your neck that knows when something is watching you. I have never felt so exposed in my life. At 4:03 a.m., I crawled back inside to help her stuff the sleeping bags, and that's when I realized the extra sleeping bag, the one we'd burned, the one we'd watched turn to ash 8 hours earlier. It was gone. Not there. Not a trace of it. And in its place, on the floor of the tent exactly where it had been the first morning, was a piece of paper. Folded once. Dirty. Amy picked it up with 2 fingers like it was radioactive and opened it. The handwriting was small, cramped, written in what looked like charcoal or pencil. 4 words. "You didn't want to share. I sleep outside." I remember the sound Amy made, not a scream, something smaller, a wounded, breathless thing. I remember grabbing her arm and dragging her out of the tent. I remember throwing everything, packs, pads, the stove, into the back of the Subaru in wild armfuls. I remember the cold mud sucking at my boots and the way my hands shook so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition for a solid 30 seconds. I remember driving, headlights on bright, fog swallowing us, the dirt road twisting and climbing. I kept checking the rearview mirror. I don't know what I expected to see. We hit pavement around 5:15, first gas station in Carson at 6. We sat in the parking lot, engine running, heater blasting, and watched the sun come up behind the clouds. Neither of us spoke. Amy was holding the note. She hadn't let go of it. I called the Skamania County Sheriff's Office from the gas station payphone. A ranger named DeWitt met us back at the campground at 9 a.m. We sat in his truck while he walked the site, took pictures, poked around. He came back 40 minutes later. "Found your tent site," he said. "Found your fire ring, found where you parked. Didn't find any sign of a third party. No tracks, no prints, no evidence anyone else was there." "The grass was flattened," I said, "in a circle around the tent, like someone walked laps." He shrugged. "Could have been elk. They bed down sometimes." I didn't argue. What was the point? We drove back to Portland in silence. Amy threw the note out the window somewhere around Washougal. She didn't ask. She just opened her hand and let the wind take it. I didn't stop her. That was October 28th, 2021. Amy started therapy in November. Acute stress disorder, they called it. She doesn't hike anymore. Doesn't camp. We sold all our gear on Craigslist for $200. Tent, pads, stove, water filter, everything. I didn't even haggle. I used to love the woods. Now when I see a tree line, my stomach drops. I check the locks 4 times before bed. I bought a security camera for our apartment door. Amy doesn't know about the knife I keep in my nightstand. And here's the thing I've never told anyone. Not Amy, not the ranger, not a soul. 6 days after we got back, I went out to the Subaru to grab my gym bag from the back seat. I'd washed the car twice since the trip, once at a self-serve bay in Gresham, once at a detail place on Hawthorne. The interior was clean. I'm sure of it. But when I opened the driver's door that morning, there was a footprint on the floor mat, a bare footprint, adult-sized, dirt, still faintly damp, pressed into the carpet like someone had stood there, facing the steering wheel, weight on their right foot. The mat was on the inside of the car. I stared at it for a long time. Then I took the mat out, hosed it off in the apartment building's parking garage, and threw it in the dumpster. I never told Amy. I still don't know who M. Kowalski is. I've Googled it a dozen times. Missing hikers in Gifford Pinchot, unidentified remains. Anything. There was a Martin Kowalski who died in a car accident in Tacoma in 2019. A Margaret Kowalski who drowned in the Lewis River in 2007. No one matching the description of a lost hiker with a stinking sleeping bag and a habit of visiting occupied tents in the middle of the night. I don't know if it was a person or something else. I don't know how the bag came back. I don't know who wrote that note or how they got into our tent twice without waking us. I don't know why they left a footprint in my car a week later. But I know this. If you ever go camping in Gifford Pinchot National Forest and you wake up to find something in your tent that wasn't there when you fell asleep, leave. Don't think. Don't rationalize. Don't burn it. Just go. Because whoever or whatever left it there, they're still sleeping outside. I've never told this story to anyone except Leo and the sheriff. Not because I'm ashamed, I didn't do anything wrong, but because every time I try to explain it out loud, the words sound ridiculous. A hat. A goddamn hat. But I'm writing it down now because maybe someone else has been through something similar, and maybe they need to know they're not crazy. Or maybe we're both crazy. I still don't know. It was late September, and Leo had been bugging me about this trip for months. 3 days in Olympic National Forest, Grace. No cell service, no email, no clients texting you at 11 p.m. about font sizes. I'm a graphic designer. He's a civil engineer. We've known each other since 10th grade, and he knows exactly how to push my buttons. You're becoming a shut-in, he said. When's the last time you saw stars that weren't on Instagram? Fine. I packed my gear. We drove my Toyota 4Runner up Forest Road 29, parked at a trailhead that had exactly one other vehicle, a beat-up Ford Ranger with Washington plates, and hiked about 6 miles in. The plan was to set up a base camp, do day hikes, and pretend the modern world didn't exist for 72 hours. I had my REI half-dome 2+ tent, my jet boil, my Benchmade knife clipped to my belt, and my favorite hat. The hat. I need to describe it because it matters later. It was a blue Patagonia trucker cap, faded from 2 summers of wearing it everywhere. Hiking, kayaking, even to the grocery store. Nothing special. No logos except the Patagonia tag on the back. No name written inside. Just a comfortable, broken-in, unremarkable blue hat that I'd bought at REI for $28 3 years ago. I was wearing it when we set up camp. The first night was perfect. We found a spot about 200 feet off the main trail, a little clearing with an old stone fire ring someone had built years ago. Moss hung from the Douglas firs like green beards. The ground was soft with pine needles and rotting leaves. Early autumn in the Pacific Northwest, damp and earthy and quiet. We pitched the tent facing east so the morning light would wake us up. Leo gathered dry wood from under fallen logs. I fired up the jet boil and made us dehydrated pad thai that tasted surprisingly decent. Around 8 o'clock, the forest went silent. Not unusual, really. Birds settle down, wind dies. But this was Olympic National Forest in late September. There should have been owls, maybe elk bugling in the distance. Something. Instead, the silence was thick, like someone had thrown a blanket over the world. I noticed it, but didn't say anything. Leo was talking about his sister's wedding, and I didn't want to interrupt with, "Hey, doesn't the silence feel weird to you?" I went to sleep with my hat hanging from a loop inside the tent vestibule. I remember, because I knocked it off when I unzipped the mesh to pee at 3 a.m., and I picked it up and put it back. That was the last time I saw my real hat. Morning came gray and wet. You know that kind of Pacific Northwest drizzle that isn't quite rain but soaks everything anyway? That was the day. I crawled out of the tent around 7:30, made coffee on the jet boil, and reached for my hat. It wasn't there. I checked the vestibule, checked inside the tent, checked under my sleeping pad. Nothing. Blue Patagonia cap vanished. "You probably left it by the fire last night," Leo said, still half asleep in his bag. "I didn't take it off at the fire." Animals don't steal hats, Grace. Go look. I retraced my steps to the fire ring. Nothing. I walked the 50 feet to where I'd peed in the middle of the night. Nothing. I expanded my search radius, 100 feet, 200, and that's when I found it. Or I found a hat. It was hanging from a broken branch of a western hemlock about eye level, maybe 300 yards northeast of camp. Same color, same style. Blue Patagonia trucker cap. I jogged toward it, relieved, already composing the "I told you so" for Leo in my head. But when I got within 10 feet, I stopped. The hat was facing me, and I could see dark stains on the brim, rust-colored, dried. My hands were shaking when I pulled it off the branch. I turned it over. Inside the sweatband, embroidered in neat white thread, were 5 letters. Grace. I dropped it like it was on fire. My hat did not have my name in it. My hat did not have blood on it. And my hat had not been hanging from a tree 300 yards from camp when I knew I'd left it in the vestibule. I stood there for maybe a full minute, just staring at it on the wet ground. Then I turned and walked back to camp, fast. I didn't run. I didn't want to run. Running would mean I was scared, and I wasn't ready to admit that yet. "What's wrong?" Leo asked when I got back. He was making oatmeal now, steam rising from his titanium pot. I told him. He walked out there with me. The hat was still on the ground where I'd dropped it. He picked it up, examined the stains, read the embroidery, and then did that thing guys do, where they try to solve a problem logically even when logic has left the building. "Maybe you bought one with your name and forgot." "I've had this hat for 3 years, I would remember. Maybe someone else named Grace lost theirs, and it's a coincidence. 300 yards from our camp, with blood on it." He was quiet for a moment. "Okay, that's weird, but there's an explanation. There's always an explanation." I wanted to believe him. Looking back now, I should have insisted we pack up and leave right then. But I didn't. I told myself it was a prank, some other hiker with a twisted sense of humor. We threw the duplicate hat in the fire ring and burned it. The smoke smelled acrid, chemical, like burning plastic mixed with something organic. We didn't talk about it for the rest of the day. The next morning, we decided to hike the ridge trail, 4 miles out, 4 miles back. I needed to move, to shake off the crawling sensation that had settled under my skin. The forest was beautiful in the gray light, everything draped in moss, ferns brushing our legs, the trail soft and quiet under our boots. About 2 miles in, the trail straightened, and I saw him. A man, maybe 150 yards ahead. He was standing in the middle of the trail, facing us, wearing a dark jacket and hiking pants, and on his head, my blue Patagonia hat, the real one, the faded one, the one without blood, without embroidery. I knew that hat. I'd worn it for 3 years. I recognized the way the brim curved, the way the back was stretched from my ponytail. "Leo," I whispered. "Leo, look." But Leo was already looking. The man raised his right hand, a slow, deliberate wave. Not friendly, performative, like he was showing us something. Then he turned and walked off the trail into the trees, and within 3 seconds, he was gone. Swallowed by the ferns and shadows, I wanted to chase him. Every instinct screamed at me to run after him and demand my hat back and to ask him who the hell he was. But my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen, cold sweat trickling down my back, my heart punching against my ribs. "We're leaving," Leo said. His voice was flat, not asking. "We're packing up, and we're leaving now." We turned around and practically jogged the 2 miles back to camp. The note was under a rock at the entrance to our tent. I saw it immediately, a folded piece of paper, white and clean, completely dry despite the drizzle. Leo picked it up before I could stop him and unfolded it, written in the same neat handwriting as the embroidery. "Thank you for the hat. Yours is better than mine." Underneath, in smaller letters, "I'll take good care of it." I threw up, right there next to the tent, on my hands and knees in the wet moss. Leo grabbed my arm and pulled me up. "We're not staying," he said. "We're leaving, now." But it was already late afternoon, 6 miles back to the car. By the time we broke camp, we'd have maybe 2 hours of daylight left, and the last thing I wanted was to be on that trail in the dark. I told Leo we should wait until dawn. He argued. I argued back. In the end, we compromised. We'd stay one more night, but we wouldn't sleep. We'd take shifts watching. That was the worst night of my life. Around midnight, the footsteps started. Slow, deliberate. Crunch, crunch, crunch on the wet leaves outside the tent. They circled once, clockwise, paused, circled again, counterclockwise. I was holding my Benchmade, blade open, my knuckles white around the handle. Leo had his headlamp off, sitting in the dark next to me. We'd killed all our lights hours ago, hoping to blend into the night. The footsteps stopped directly behind the tent, maybe 3 feet from the nylon wall. Then a voice, male, soft, almost conversational. "Grace." Not a question, not a shout, just my name, spoken like he was greeting me across a coffee shop. Leo grabbed my wrist. His hand was shaking. I could feel his pulse through his fingertips. Fast, frantic. I wanted to scream, but my throat had closed up completely. All I could do was sit there in the pitch black, gripping a knife, listening to someone breathe on the other side of a millimeter of nylon. Then a light. A flashlight beam sweeping through the trees about 50 feet away. It moved slowly, methodically, like someone searching for something. It passed over our tent once. I saw the glow through the fabric and kept going. The footsteps resumed, moving away this time, fading. Crunch, 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 then nothing. We didn't move for an hour. At 1:45 a.m., Leo whispered, "We're leaving, right now, leave everything." We grabbed our packs, only the essentials, water, first aid, car keys, and ran. Not hiked, ran. 6 miles in the dark, headlamps on low, tripping over roots and rocks. I fell twice. The second time, I smashed my right knee into a stone and felt something pop. I got up anyway. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. Every few minutes I looked back. I never saw him, but I felt him. That's the thing about those woods. You can feel when someone's watching. Your neck prickles, your shoulders tighten. Every shadow between the trees looks like a person. We reached the Forerunner at 5:47 a.m., just as the sky was starting to lighten. I fumbled the keys, dropped them, picked them up with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Leo was scanning the tree line the whole time. I started the engine, threw it in reverse, and didn't stop driving until we hit the paved road 20 miles later. The police found him a week later. His name was Martin Cole, 43 years old, lived in a cabin about 4 miles from where we'd camped. No job, no family, no criminal record, just a quiet guy who kept to himself. When they searched his cabin, they found boxes, dozens of them, each one labeled with a name and a date. Hiking gear, water bottles, bandanas, socks, a single boot, a compass, a journal, and hats. 27 hats, each one carefully tagged with a name, a location, and the date he'd taken it. Some were store-bought, some were handmade replicas like mine. They found my real blue Patagonia cap in a box labeled Grace, Olympic National Forest, September 28th. He'd been doing this for years, collecting souvenirs from hikers, watching them, following them, making duplicates of their things, and sometimes, the sheriff wouldn't tell me how often, returning them to the owners in ways designed to terrify. They arrested him. He confessed to everything: stalking, theft, trespassing. He's in prison now, serving 8 years. Case closed, right? Except, here's what I still can't explain, and here's why I sleep with a light on 2 years later. When the police showed me the box with my hat, I asked the sheriff one question. How did he embroider my name into the duplicate hat before I found it hanging from that tree? The sheriff frowned. What do you mean? I lost my hat the first night. I found the duplicate the next morning. That means he had to have made it in advance. which means he knew my name before we ever set up camp. The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Maybe he heard you and your friend talking. You probably said each other's names around the fire that first night." Maybe. That's the logical explanation. That's what I tell myself when I wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing and my sheets soaked in sweat. But I remember that first night. The silence. The way the forest went dead quiet around 8 o'clock. I remember Leo and I eating pad thai and talking about his sister's wedding, and I remember, I've replayed it 1,000 times, that neither of us said my name. Not once. We'd known each other for 15 years. We didn't need to use names, so how did he know? I still don't have an answer. The sheriff closed the case. Martin Cole is in a cell somewhere. And I sold all my camping gear on Craigslist 6 months later and moved into a 4th-floor apartment in downtown Seattle, where the streetlights keep the shadows away and the only footsteps I hear at night belong to my neighbors coming home late. But sometimes, when I'm walking to my car after dark, I feel that prickle on the back of my neck. I turn around, and there's never anyone there, just the city, just the noise. And I think about the note. Yours is better than mine. Better how? Better because it was mine, better because he'd been watching me for longer than I want to know? I still don't know what that means. And honestly, I hope I never find out. Find